So this is the fret removal process. Now, I don't recommend doing it the way that I did here. I'm using, obviously the heat gun is fine. It's a soldering gun that I have, and I'm moving it back and forth so that it doesn't sit too long in one spot and doesn't burn. That part's fine. It's that I'm using these needle nose pliers that I have, because that's all I had on hand. I would make sure to use some proper fret removal pliers. They get underneath, up towards the tang, and you can kind of wiggle underneath the fret. If you look at fret removal online, you'll find people using them. I was planning on resetting these frets, was planning on redoing these frets entirely, so I wasn't too worried about them having any marks on them. But I ended up recrowning them anyway and reusing them, and they were fine. So I just sanded off the little bit of marks that the pliers did make. But I am actually going really slow. Obviously it's sped up here, but I'm trying to go as lightly as I can and kind of wiggle it out of there. But they come out pretty easily, no tear out or anything. And I wasn't too concerned about any tear out anyway, because I knew I was gonna do an epoxy board. I would have to fill it and cut it out, and anyway, it's a long process. But this removal part was pretty easy to do. Just heat the fret, just in case there's any glue in there. I mean, it warms up the wood and it makes it more pliable to pulling the stuff out, pulling out the frets themselves. I labeled them with flags using, just a plain number system, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that I can put them in a bag, because I knew I would be able to leave them on the workbench. We have cats and they go out in the garage all the time, and if they knock them loose, I wouldn't know where they are, or I wouldn't know which one is which, and it would take a while to figure out which one goes where, because they're not all perfectly cut. This is just a cheap Glarry. And the fretwork wasn't terrible from the factory, but it's also not fantastic. Not that I did much better job after putting them back in or anything, but they're not on the higher end like a Schecter would be or something. So yeah, just heating them up and yoinking them out. And also, I'm not sure if you can see this in the video, but there are some little black, almost looks like burn marks on the frets on the ends. And honestly, that wasn't from me. Those were already there when I pulled them up, because I'm barely putting any heat at all on these frets, and I'm also using water to keep them from being burned. And they still, I'm not really sure. I have no idea how that happened, but I didn't notice this before I did this on my bass. I pulled them off. I didn't notice it. It could very well be that it's the type of wood that it is, and it's just, maybe it does burn easy. I don't know. Maybe it is my fault. But I honestly, I remember seeing those marks before I lifted the frets out. I'm not sure if it's compound or if it looks like burn to me. I don't know. Maybe it is my fault. Who knows? So it doesn't matter. I end up filling them in, and you don't see it when the frets are on, so it's not a big deal. Get into the last part here. Trying to take my time. The ones that are closer to the neck, closer to the end of the neck, I were in there pretty good. So took a little more refining to get those out. If I were to do this again, I would definitely buy a proper fret removal tool. It's just faster and less likely for tear out, and also you don't have to worry about any damage to the fret end. Well, the sides of the fret that you're going to see, you don't necessarily feel it, but you would see it. And less work to have to go back and sand that stuff off, or grind it off. But like I said, I re-ground it, and you'll see that later. It's a lot of work, but it got done. Also, it's important to make sure that the neck is straight when you put the frets back on. I know that sounds pretty obvious, but it's something you might not think about when you're putting it back together. So when you take the strings off, the neck's not going to be perfectly straight. And when I do, however, level this both directions, in the X and the Y. I should argue, depending on which Cartesian coordinate-like system you use. If you're thinking Y is up and down, so then a Z on the Z. In other words, down the neck and across the neck, it was level when I did the epoxy fill. So But here I'm just cleaning out the fret slots, and then I'm going to tape them off, taping off the frets themselves so I don't lose them. There's more to come. Next is the inlay layout, and making my, well, actually the next thing I do is I make a sanding block using the current radius that's on the board, so I don't have to think about what radius it is. And again, I didn't want to spend any extra money. This is just an artistic, cheap thing I wanted to try. And so if you like what you see, like, comment, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching.